Hello, namaskar, and welcome to Global Manthan. I'm your host Ritwik, and I welcome you all to your very own podcast for celebrating the exchange of knowledge. Once again, a warm welcome to all of you. और जो लोग ऋत्विक स्पीक्स से मेरे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं उन सभी का एक बार फिर से बहुत बहुत स्वागत. Knowledge is power. The first time I heard this quote was from the missile man of India, former president, late Shri APJ Abdul Kalam. I remember reading The Wings of Fire, his autobiography, and there it really, from a very young age, captivated me as a person. And I heard this, and this belief that knowledge is power has stayed with me from the very beginning. It is true that knowledge comes in many forms and many mediums. But for the last few years, there have been so many digital platforms and mediums of communication which have gained popularity. And I believe this podcasting has become the go to platform for sharing one's thoughts and one's expressions across. And as an extension of my YouTube channel, uh, those who have watched me, those who have seen my videos from Ritwik Speaks know how passionate I am about sharing my culture, my language, but with the global worldview now. And I always wanted to do something in English. And this podcast, Global Manthan, is an is a foray into that direction. And this is why I'm very happy that this is the very first edition, the introductory episode of this podcast. A little bit about myself. Ritwik Dwivedi is my name, as I already shared. I'm an international lawyer made in India. Now, what does that mean? Which means I have the qualification and also a specialization in international law, which I gained here in the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland, which is where this podcast is being recorded currently. And but I have my roots firmly entrenched in my home country, that is India. India, as you already know, that is Bharat, is an ancient civilization. It's an ancient land which has given a lot to the world, and that's what I have shared previously through Ritwik Speaks, my native language in my native language on my channel. And currently, I'm doing this podcast in English exclusively because this is intended to have a global outlook, a global worldview of things. And I come from a family background where I have been always encouraged to follow my dreams, and the quest for knowledge brought me outside of India and to become an international lawyer. Um, and I always have been curious about the world, how things work, about science, about politics, about language, exchanging different cultures, different civilizations, economics. And that is precisely what motivated me to now develop this platform, to create a space where there is dialogue. But before I move into that, I want to explain a little bit about, and you as a listener and as a viewer might have the curiosity, what does Global Manthan mean? Well, global, the word does not need much definition or introduction from me. But Manthan is a Sanskrit word which means churning. And for this, I need to tell you a story. And for that story, you need to sit back and relax because this is a story from the ancient scriptures of India, from the Vishnu Puran. And in that, it's a story about the Samudra Manthan, the churning of the ocean. According to the scriptures, there was a legendary epic struggle between the Devas and the Asuras, Devas being the gods and Asuras being the demons. And both of them wanted to find out the nectar which was hidden in the belly of the ocean. And to get that nectar out, they struggled for months, for years, and there was a mountain between in the ocean which was hidden beneath the ocean, and Lord Vishnu with his serpent then. Um, that serpent was used as a rope from either side, and the Devas and the Asuras were struggling, and they had a sort of a tug of war, and through that churning, the bellowing of the ocean was being done. And after a while, after that struggle, the nectar, Amrit, the essence of all human life, was obtained by the gods. Metaphorically speaking, that is precisely what I intend to do through this podcast as well, to reach the Amrit, that is, the truth. Because any exchange of knowledge without truth is just spreading misinformation and disinformation, which has become so prevalent throughout the world these days. And that is precisely what I want through this podcast, that we celebrate knowledge, but we do so with absolute truth, that we try to engage the truth. But what is the truth? And how can you reach the truth and spread knowledge and share, exchange views on geopolitics, economics, culture, language, religion without having an opposite worldview? And that is precisely where that churning, that manthan, which is nowadays also used as the word manthan has been come to understand, is contemplation. Without that, you cannot reach the truth. So, through this podcast series, we will invite guests, we will do in depth research and analysis ourselves, and we will always sometimes find the inconvenient, the opposite worldview to what we are so comfortable to hearing. I believe that as a person living in this digital age, we are so used to echo chambers, we are so used to hearing what is pleasant for our ears and the comfortable lies and sometimes the comfortable truths, but it's the discomfort. It is to challenge one's worldviews and to hear from the other side that makes you think. And that's the churning, that's the contemplation that needs to happen for that dialogue to be constructed, for that exchange to take place. And that is precisely what I want to do through Ritwik Speaks and its new edition, the Global Manthan Podcast. Now, what are the kind of topics that we will discuss? As I said, we will invite a lot of eminent guests, experts who can speak on geopolitics, culture, language, economics, but we will always do that with a worldview, having our roots or having my perspective as an Indian person, because that is precisely what I also bring to the table. What can we discuss? Well, that is something that I want you as the viewer or as the listener to also help me out with. What are some of the topics that you would want to listen? For example, we can traverse the different decades that have passed. There are so many burning topics that happen. In the 2000s, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, we had global terrorism, post 9/11, the world order was kind of changing. 2008, you had the financial crisis, economic institutions, bailouts, economic crises, civil war conflicts brewing up. In the 2010s, you had climate change, which was exacerbated, mass migration events happening due to civil war events, which started in the previous decade. And in the 2020s, the current decade, we started with a global pandemic, which was a horrible situation. And that sort of gave rise to more protectionist policies, more economic stagflation, underemployment, which are some of the burning topics in the world currently. So some topics, for example, and I will drop this list down in the comment section and in the polls and the activity, and I want you as the viewer or as the listener to help me out and to share with me what you would like to hear about first. Some episodes could cover the tariffonomics, the tariff-based economics of today, the psyche, the results of protectionism, whether it's a good policy, bad policy, and we will always bring you two different worldviews, the so-called right view and the so-called left view, because it doesn't matter if you're left, right, or center. What matters is that we all should celebrate and get to the truth. Knowledge is power, but that power comes with a great responsibility, as Stanley said. And that responsibility lies on us, that if we are engaging with knowledge as a medium of power, we need to also do it with a modicum of truth. We could also discuss about politics, about religion, what is the genesis of the current conflicts in Israel, Gaza, what is the genesis of conflict in Russia, Ukraine, prevalent topics which are very much hot right now. We could also do an international law series, which is where my expertise would come in, sort of international law 101. What is the international legal order? What institutions does it serve? What does it have? and what historically has been the genesis of conflicts, how society has come about to where it is, anthropological studies, which are very influential and which are very interesting as well to listen to as a as a listener, and also to see as a viewer. And we will always do an in-depth research, historical analysis on topics like these as well. I have planned to invite a few guests, which we will hear from in due course. But until such time, I think this serves as a great introduction to this podcast series, Global Manthan. So, I want to hear from you, the listener, and the viewer, and from both my channels, Ritwik Speaks on YouTube and Global Manthan, which will also be uploaded to Spotify. I wish you a very, very good week, and I am excited to begin this new journey with you together, to exchange knowledge and to uncover the truth. Thank you very much, and see you very soon.